Greetings, everyone. So the following is a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan here is talking with Eddie Bravo, who is an American martial arts instructor and also a podcaster, stand-up comedian and musician. And the two of them are also good friends, so Eddie Bravo quite frequently makes appearances on his podcast. Now, during their long discussion, Eddie Bravo decides to bring up the Shroud of Turin.
When you had Mel Gibson on your podcast the other day, he brought up the Shroud of Turin.
As you can see, Eddie Bravo brings up Mel Gibson, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast earlier, and who also brought up the Shroud of Turin. Now, interestingly, during that discussion, when Joe Rogan asked his assistant to pull up some articles on the Shroud of Turin, he was told there are some articles suggesting this is the real deal and other articles trying to debunk it, and he said pull up the ones suggesting it's real. Now, that is quite a shift for Joe Rogan, because those who listened to his podcast in its earlier years will know that he wasn't exactly pro-Christianity back then. I remember I would listen to some of his podcasts before it was so big, before it was the #1 podcast in the world, back when he was mostly inviting fellow stand-up comedians and they would just chit-chat about various things. And whenever the topic of Christianity came up, not that it came up that often, he would normally make fun of it and talk about how silly it was.
The New Testament is utter horseshit. It's created by a bishop and a emperor. That's a fact. That's like established religious fact. And not only that, it was written hundreds of years after the death of Jesus. So what are you talking about? Because if you're talking about the old stuff, you got to go deep. Go to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Go to the most ridiculous aspects of that and tell me, you basing your life on that?
These days, he's far from that, Joe Rogan. He may not have confessed his belief in Christ quite yet, but he's certainly willing to listen to those who preach Jesus and preach Christianity, and he's nowhere near as dismissive as he once was.
Yeah. And I always thought that was fake. Because like in the 80s,
what is that?
The shroud, it's like the cloth that Jesus was buried in and left an image of him. And in the 80s, like 1988, they did carbon dating on it. And they go, oh, it's fake. See that?
Yeah, it literally has
the
image of Jesus burned into it somehow or another.
I never looked into it. I just figured it was fake. But listening to you and Mel Gibson talk about it, I'm like,
it's real?
Is there
Well, apparently it's a lot older than they assumed when they did the first testing. And one of the problems is cross-contamination. There's also been repairs to it. But they did subsequent testing, and they found that it was like 2,000 plus years old.
Yeah, and the one thing, it's the most studied artifact ever.
Damn.
Like particle physicists, nuclear engineers, they all studied it, and some of them, some believe in it, some don't believe in it, but they all agree on one thing: no one knows how they did it.
Right.
There's
no one knows how they made it.
There's no paint. There's no dye.
If it turns out that they can't figure out how anyone could ever do it, like if no one has come up with a theory of how to do that today, that's where it gets really interesting. Because it wasn't paint and it wasn't dye and
they all agree on that.
Wasn't burned.
They all agree it's a mystery. But then the skeptics say, just because we don't know how it was done doesn't make it real, which is a good point. But then the other side's like, dude, all these scientists have no idea how they faked it. It's got to be real. So it's all about how you look at it.
I lean on the side be real.
There's a nuclear engineer.
Well, that would be the most fun.
There's a nuclear engineer. You can go on YouTube. His name is Robert Rucker. Watch his breakdown. This guy's a nuclear dude. He's breaking down the it's insane because it's a negative image on a non-photographic material. It's linen.
Right.
And then it turns out, like if you look at it with the naked eye, it's white, and then you see the image of the face is kind of like yellow. You can barely see it. But in like 1898, some photographer took a picture of it and then looked at the negative, and then all of a sudden in the negative, the whole body appears, front and back, because he was buried like with a.
You see the images, Jamie?
He was buried with the sheet under him, and it went around his head. That's the back of him, because
the right one's the back and the left one's the front. That's crazy.
No one knows how they did it.
And it
No-
even has,
no
like, the
scientists.
holes where the wrist would be nailed.
That was the thing with Jesus. With me, it's very hard. It was always very hard to believe in Jesus. I'm like,
Agreed.
dude, the resurrection, like that's a hard one to wrap your brain around, right? I could believe that he existed. I could believe that he got crucified. A lot of people got crucified, but the resurrection was always the thing that kept me from really believing in Jesus. I'm like, there's no way the resurrection was real.
But even if this is real, Eddie, it doesn't mean he was resurrected, right? It just means he was crucified and he was the actual real man.
So Eddie Bravo starts explaining the miraculous nature of the Shroud of Turin, and the person to his right says, well, this doesn't mean Jesus was divine, it just means he was a real person and he was buried in this cloth, completely forgetting about the fact that it isn't just a cloth, it's a cloth with an unexplainable, seemingly photographically negative image on it of the front and back of a man.
No, the thing is how the image got on. The people that believe that it's real believe that when he was resurrected, some kind of ultraviolet radiation, some kind of burst made that image. Because
gotcha.
that's because that image has never been on any other shroud. People get buried in shrouds all the time. There's never an image like that.
Pretty crazy.
And the crazy thing is the blood, there's no image under the blood. So the blood was there first, and then the image is after.
After Eddie Bravo explains this, he does a few minutes later go on to say that the Shroud of Turin has convinced him that Jesus Christ did indeed have a resurrection, even though this is something that was very difficult for him to believe before.
You know, I've always believed, like, Jesus is a new thing for me. Like the Shroud of Turin, I'm all in now with the Shroud of Turin.
Now, Eddie Bravo has made various comments on the Catholic Church that are not particularly smart, so I wouldn't say he's anywhere near perfect, but then again, who of us is? Either way, this is really quite the testimony from Bravo, talking about how he now basically believes that Jesus is God and says Christ is King. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this. Thank you very much for watching the video. Have a blessed day.